There is this very specific, very unsettling feeling that I think a lot of people experience, but they rarely actually talk about.
Right, it's very internal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you wake up one Tuesday and nothing terrible has happened, right? The sun is shining, your morning coffee is good, but inside, the spark is just gone.
The spiritual static.
Yes, the static. You are just going through the motions. You are standing, bowing, prostrating if you pray, or you are fasting when the calendar tells you to. You are ostensibly doing all the right things, but internally.
It feels like you are a phone that looks like it's charging. Like the little lightning bolt icon is there on the screen, but the plug is pulled out just enough from the wall that no actual power is flowing into the battery.
That is the exact feeling. It is a perfect description of what scholars often call the spiritual plateau or the drift.
And honestly, that feeling is terrifying because it is usually completely silent. You don't wake up one morning and consciously decide, I am going to disconnect from the divine today.
Right, you don't just decide to become an atheist overnight.
Exactly. You just wake up and realize the signal is dead, and you have absolutely no idea when it actually cut out.
And naturally, when that happens, we look for a smoking gun, don't we? We want a big, obvious reason for the disconnect.
I want a dramatic narrative to explain the emptiness.
We want to be able to say, oh, it was that huge crisis back in 2019, or it's because I committed that one massive mistake. We look for explosions.
We do.
Yeah.
But the deep dive we are getting into today suggests the smoking gun isn't an explosion at all. It is rust.
Rust. That is such a profound way to look at it, because rust happens slowly, day by day.
Precisely. And we have pulled together a really massive stack of sources today to look at this. We're talking about lectures, writings, and analyses from diverse Islamic scholars and thinkers, people like Yasmin Mogahed, Mufti Menk, Hamza Yusuf, and several others.
And just to be clear up front, as we synthesize these diverse sources, we are just impartially reporting on the frameworks they present. We are not taking sides on any sort of ideological divides if they exist out there. We just want to convey the core ideas contained in the original source material.
Absolutely. And if you synthesize all these sources, the consensus they reach is honestly chilling. The things that kill your connection with the divine are rarely those big cinematic events. They are the mundane, completely invisible daily habits.
The silent killers. That was the framing from the sources that really grabbed me during our prep for this deep dive.
It's a medical diagnosis, essentially, but for the soul.
Right. And just a quick heads up for everyone listening, this isn't just going to be a giant list of do not do X, Y, and Z. We aren't here to wag a finger at anyone.
No, not at all. The mission here is to look at the actual mechanics of the heart, how these specific habits physically and spiritually calcify us.
Often without us noticing until it's just too late.
Exactly. So we have synthesized this huge body of work into 3 distinct frameworks to make it digestible for you.
First, we are going to tackle the 15 bad habits. These are the external blockers, basically the things we do with our limbs and our time.
And then we move inward. We look at Yasmin Mogahed's 4 silent habits. This is where things get really psychological and, frankly, uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. And then the part that actually worried me the most when I read the research, the 5 hidden habits that make the heart spiritually ugly.
Yeah, that last category is a tough reality check because these are habits that often affect people who look very religious on the outside.
Right, the outward appearance is fine, but the inside is a mess. But we won't just leave you in the diagnosis phase.
No, we end with the prescription. Practical, actionable steps for spiritual purification. Because the point of all this isn't guilt. The point is the cure.
The point is rebuilding the faith, so let's unpack this. We are moving from a robotic practice to a living, breathing connection.
Let's start with the big list.
Yeah, we have these 15 habits from our first source stack. Now, just listing 15 things in a row sounds like a grocery list, so we group them into logical clusters.
Which makes it much easier to see the patterns in our own lives.
Exactly. So let's start with the very first cluster. We are calling this the time and discipline traps.
This creates the foundation for basically everything else that goes wrong.
And the first one on the list is something we all battle probably every single day: procrastination.
But the source frames it very differently than your standard productivity guru who just wants you to work harder or hustle more.
Right. It's not about inbox zero. The source says procrastination isn't just about being lazy or disorganized. It is a trap that actively feeds spiritual doubt.
There was a specific quote from the material that really stuck out. Action feeds Imaan.
Imaan being faith. So action feeds faith.
Precisely. Let's break down the actual mechanics of that. When you delay a worldly goal, You maybe lose some time or you lose money.
Right, your project is late.
But when you delay a spiritual impulse, say, you have a sudden thought to give charity, or to call your parents to check on them, or to get up and pray, and you pause.
That pause is dangerous.
That pause is where the hesitation settles in. The source argues that later is fundamentally a lie we tell ourselves.
Later is a lie.
When you habitually delay goodness, you are literally training your heart to hesitate in front of God.
That is a very heavy reframing. It's not just, oh, I will do it later. It is actually saying, I don't prioritize this right now. It is a massive signal of value.
And that leads directly into the second habit in this cluster, which is arguably the absolute heavy hitter here, delaying Salah.
Delaying the prayer. Now, to be super clear for the listener, because this is a nuance the source is heavily emphasized, we aren't talking about missing the prayer entirely.
Right, missing it entirely is obviously a major sin and a total severing of the connection.
We are talking about the last-minute syndrome. The people who do pray, but always at the absolute buzzer.
The sources describe this as the discipline versus dopamine battle. And there's a really powerful analogy here that I think perfectly explains the static we talked about earlier.
The brick analogy.
Yes. Imagine you are standing in front of a door. Every time you delay the prayer, pushing it to the absolute edge of the allowable time window because you were watching a show or scrolling social media or just finishing one more email, you place a brick in front of that door.
And the door represents your connection.
The door is your access to the divine presence. Eventually, you have built a solid wall. So you stand up to pray at the very last minute, and you wonder why you can't get through.
You wonder why you don't feel the sweetness or the relief in the prayer.
You wonder why it feels like you were just talking to a brick wall. Well, it is because you built the wall yourself with your own procrastination.
That visual is terrifying, because it implies the door wasn't locked from the other side.
Exactly.
God didn't lock me out. I walled myself in.
And consider the psychological signal you are sending to your own subconscious mind.
What do you mean?
If you treat the meeting with your Creator as the thing you only do when you have finished absolutely everything else, or when a commercial break happens on TV, what does that say about the hierarchy of your relationships?
It says the relationship with God is at the very bottom of the list.
It says it is the lowest priority. You are giving the Creator the scraps of your time, the leftovers, and then you expect a premium, high-speed connection. It just doesn't work that way.
Ouch. That stings, but it makes perfect logical sense. And it links so closely to the third point in this time and discipline cluster, sleep.
Yes, sleep and rest.
This one surprised me initially when I was reading the sources. I mean, I love a good nap. I value my sleep. How is sleep considered a spiritual habit?
It is about the chaotic sleep schedule, specifically staying up late for absolutely no benefit.
Revenge, bedtime, procrastination.
Exactly. The source notes that both biologically and spiritually, the night was created for rest.
So when we flip that script, staying up until 3 in the morning scrolling on our phones or binge watching a series, we are fighting our own biology.
But more importantly than the biology, we destroy our ability to wake up for Fajr, the pre-dawn prayer.
So it's a domino effect. Bad sleep equals missed spiritual appointments.
It absolutely is. A tired body houses a weak spirit. You cannot have spiritual vigilance if you are physically exhausted from your own mismanagement of time.
That makes sense. You're just too drained to care.
The source makes a really fascinating point about discipline here. If you actually respect the meeting with God in the morning, you prepare for it the night before.
By going to bed early.
Yes. If you don't prepare, you don't actually respect the meeting.
It is like if I had a massive job interview at 8 in the morning for my dream job, I wouldn't stay up until 4 in the morning playing video games. I would be in bed by 10 p.m.
Exactly. Your preparation shows what you truly value.
Okay, let's move to the second cluster of these 15 habits. This is physical and sensory consumption.
This is all about what we put into our bodies, both food and data.
Let's start with the food. We have to talk about the gut-spirit connection.
The source highlights not just eating haram or forbidden food, which is a hard barrier to having your prayers answered, but also eating unhealthy or heavily processed food.
Is this essentially the whole your body is a temple argument?
In Islamic terms, the concept is that the body is an amana, a trust.
A trust meaning it doesn't actually belong to you.
Right. It is on loan to you from God. If you fill that loaned vehicle with processed junk, excessive sugar, and really heavy foods, the immediate result is physical lethargy.
A heavy stomach leads to a heavy heart.
Precisely. You physically cannot summon the energy to stand in prayer or to reflect deeply on your life if your body is practically comatose from a massive sugar crash.
It is incredibly hard to have a profound spiritual revelation when you are deep in a food coma. I think we have all been there after a huge dinner. You just want to lie down and sleep, not ponder the mysteries of the cosmos.
Right, and that lethargy links directly to the next point in this cluster, neglecting physical
The
strength.
strong believer concept.
Yes, the prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned that a strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than a weak believer. Now, the sources clarify this isn't just about going to the gym and bench pressing 300 pounds.
It's about functional capability.
Exactly. The source was actually pretty brutal here. It stated that if you are young and able-bodied, but you let yourself atrophy out of sheer laziness, that is a form of betrayal.
Betrayal of the trust.
It is extreme ingratitude, really. You have been given this incredible physical vehicle to do good in the world, to help people, to stand in worship, to serve your community.
And instead, you are just letting it rust in the driveway.
Letting it rust limits your capacity to do good.
Now let's pivot to the other type of consumption in this cluster. Not the food we eat, but the sensory input, the eyes and the ears.
This really feels like the ultimate challenge of our modern time. We're consuming absolute terabytes of data every single day,
The source focuses heavily on looking at and listening to haram.
which includes music with highly toxic messages, inappropriate content, pornography, and just general filth that we scroll past.
But the specific consequence mentioned by the scholars isn't just the standard, it is a sin warning.
Yes.
It is desensitization.
Desensitization is the key word here.
Unpack that mechanic for us. How does that actually work?
Think of your heart as a vessel, like a cup.
Okay, a cup.
If you fill a cup to the brim with mud, you cannot then pour clear, pure water into it and expect to get a clean drink.
The pure water just spills over the sides or it instantly gets muddy.
Exactly. If your eyes are constantly consuming things that displease God, hypersexualized content, extreme violence, pure vanity, and your ears are constantly filled with noise and inappropriate language, there's literally no bandwidth left for the Quran.
So the hardware is jammed.
The heart becomes calloused. It builds a thick skin. So later, you hear a verse of scripture that should logically make you cry, or a profound reminder that should shake you to your core, but you feel absolutely nothing.
The static again.
Yes. Why do you feel nothing? Because you just spent 3 hours watching something that completely numbed your moral compass. You have overloaded the sensors.
We are completely terrified of silence, aren't we? So we fill every gap in our day with noise, and that noise acts as a literal jammer for the specific signal we are actually searching for.
Precisely. And that leads us perfectly into the third cluster, social and intellectual neglect.
This is all about how we interact with the people around us.
And the very first habit here is the tongue. This is a massive one in all of literature.
The source material calls constant argumentation odious.
Toxic speech, gossiping, arguing just for the sheer sake of being right or looking smart. These things harden the heart almost instantly.
I feel like we all know that person. Or, if we are being brutally honest with ourselves, we actually are that person sometimes. The person who treats every casual conversation like a high-stakes debate club.
They just have to win. They have to correct you on some minor detail.
But spiritually, that constant need to win is devastating, isn't it?
It creates a completely egocentric worldview. You aren't actually seeking the truth in the conversation. You're just seeking victory for your own ego.
And when you are constantly operating in attack mode, your heart loses all of its softness.
You cannot be aggressive and combative with people all day and then expect to suddenly be humble and submissive with God on the prayer mat. The spiritual switch just doesn't flip that fast.
And closely related to the tongue is the next habit, bad company.
We are the average of the people we spend the most time with. It is just simple human osmosis.
If your friends treat faith as a joke, or if their entire life revolves around things that distract from God, eventually you will drift too.
Gravity works. It is incredibly hard to fly when everyone around you is holding you down to the ground.
The source also explicitly mentioned neglecting family in this cluster, specifically cutting ties with relatives or treating parents poorly.
Because how you treat the people God bound you to is a direct reflection of your obedience to God himself.
And the final habit in the social and intellectual cluster is neglecting knowledge.
Ignorance is not an excuse. It is a massive liability.
The source makes a really valid point here. You cannot revere or fear what you do not actually know.
If you remain ignorant of the deep realities of the religion, your conviction will always be incredibly weak because it is based entirely on vibes and cultural momentum, not on actual facts.
Vibes, not facts. That is a deeply dangerous way to live your spiritual life. When the vibes change, your faith collapses.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move to the fourth and final cluster of these 15 external habits. This one is called the spiritual voids. These are the things we simply stop doing.
Right, the omissions. And the first is neglecting the Quran.
It is consistently described in the sources as the rope to God.
If you let go of the rope, you drift away. It is not that God moved away from you. You let go of the tether.
The source suggests a very practical fix here, the one-page rule.
Just read one single page a day. If you cannot even commit to reading one page, you are actively choosing to disconnect. You are choosing the drift.
Then there is neglecting dhikr, which is remembrance, and dua, which is supplication.
The distinction the scholars make here is absolutely crucial. There is a massive difference between just saying prayers and actually connecting.
What does neglecting dhikr look like in practice?
Neglecting dhikr means you go through your entire day, your work, your commute, making dinner, without once internally acknowledging the Creator's presence.
You become essentially a secular person who just happens to do a physical prayer ritual a few times a day.
Exactly. And then there is neglecting charity. Greed hardens the heart. Charity purifies your wealth, yes, but it fundamentally purifies the heart from its sheer attachment to physical stuff.
The material world. We also have neglecting tafakkur on this list, which means reflection, right?
Failing to look at nature or creation or your own life to find the signs of God, going through the world completely blind to the miracles happening around you every second.
And finally, the last of the 15 external habits, negative thinking.
Distrusting Allah's plan.
This one is insidious because we often think of pessimism as just a quirky personality trait. We say, oh, I'm not negative, I'm just a realist.
But the source argues it is actually a major spiritual failing. To constantly expect the absolute worst outcome in your life is to deeply doubt the mercy and the wisdom of the one who created you.
It is almost like a subtle accusation against God's character.
It's exactly that. It says, I don't trust you to take care of me.
Wow. So that is the complete landscape of the external blockers, the 15 habits. But now we really need to pivot and go much deeper.
We need to look at Yasmin Moghed's work on the silent killers.
Yes, the 4 silent habits that weaken the heart. These aren't necessarily sins in the legal sense. The religious police aren't coming to arrest you for these, but they are daily habits that completely destroy the heart's immune system.
This is where we shift from the obvious external actions to the very subtle internal states. These are habits that do not make any noise. You cannot see them on the outside of a person.
The first silent killer she mentions is excessive talking. She actually calls it the talkative heart.
Now, this isn't just about gossiping or backbiting, which we already covered in the external habits. This is literally about the sheer volume of speech a person produces.
Why is just talking a lot considered a spiritual problem?
Because when the tongue is constantly running, the heart cannot reflect. It is a mechanical issue of bandwidth.
If you are always broadcasting, you are never receiving.
Exactly. Yasmin Moghed says that silence is actual nourishment for the soul.
Nourishment?
Yes. Silence allows the heart time to catch up with the body. Think about our modern culture. We are deeply, fundamentally uncomfortable with silence.
We really are. If there is a 10-second lull in a conversation, everyone panics.
We immediately pull out our phones or we blurt out something completely random just to fill the dead air.
But the source says that lull, that dead air, is where the soul actually breathes.
If you fill every single second of your day with words or podcasts or music, you suffocate the heart. You lose the ability to listen to your own conscience.
Or to hear the subtle guidance God might be sending you.
You drown it all out with your own voice.
That definitely hits home. I talk for a living, literally, so I'm definitely taking serious notes on that one. The second silent habit she mentions is comparison.
She calls it the thief of gratitude.
This is such a profound insight from the text. You cannot be envious and grateful at the exact same time.
They are mutually exclusive emotions. You physically and psychologically cannot hold both states in your heart simultaneously. It is like trying to inhale and exhale at the very same moment.
It is the highlight reel effect, isn't it? We look at someone's Instagram life, their perfect vacation photos, their immaculately dressed family, their amazing promotion, and we compare it to our messy, unedited, behind-the-scenes reality.
Exactly. You are comparing their curated public victory with your private everyday struggle. But the danger isn't just that it makes you feel bad about your own life.
What's the deeper spiritual danger?
The danger, as Mogahed points out, is that it completely shifts your internal focus from what Allah gave me to what Allah withheld from me.
Oh, wow. So it morphs into resentment against God.
It does. It becomes this toxic, unspoken accusation. Why did you give them that house, that spouse, that job, and not me?
And that question just rots the foundation of faith.
It destroys your contentment. Your rida, which is the Islamic concept of deep satisfaction with the divine decree. You stop seeing your own massive blessings because you are way too busy counting someone else's.
The third silent habit is delaying worship. Now, I know we touched on delaying the prayer in the first list of 15, but Yasmin Mogahed adds a really important nuance here. She frames it as deprioritization.
Right. It is completely distinct from just lazily missing a prayer. This is about the fundamental mindset where worship is viewed as something you try to squeeze or fit into your busy life.
Rather than being the central anchor around which you build everything else.
It is the stark difference between saying, I have to pray, and saying, I get to pray.
And the specific consequence she notes for this deprioritization is the loss of barakah, the loss of blessing in your time.
Have you ever had one of those days where you feel like you are running at top speed from the moment you wake up? You are busy every single second, ticking boxes off a list. But at the end of the day, you look back and realize you accomplished absolutely nothing of value.
Only every single Tuesday of my life. It feels exactly like sprinting on a treadmill. Lots of sweat, zero forward movement.
That feeling is often a direct result of a lack of barakah. When the center of your life, the connection with God, is unstable and deprioritized, the rest of the day just wobbles.
Life feels completely chaotic because the foundation is shaky.
You spend your life chasing time, but you never actually catch it because you haven't honored the creator of time.
The fourth silent killer is ignoring the inner state, or as the sources sometimes call it, spiritual numbness.
This is the deeply ingrained habit of refusing to acknowledge your own internal pain, your guilt, or your lingering doubts and questions.
It's the stiff upper lip mentality gone completely wrong, the I am fine culture.
The source specifically mentions the danger of pretending you are fine while you are slowly dying inside.
Why is that dangerous spiritually? Isn't stoicism supposed to be a good thing?
Not when it blocks honesty with God. The scholars say the heart is like a mirror. If dust, which represents sins or neglect, or even unprocessed trauma settles on that mirror, and you don't intentionally wipe it off, eventually it completely stops reflecting light.
It just becomes dull.
If you feel guilt after doing something wrong, that is actually a really good sign. It means the heart is still alive. It is feeling the pain of separation from God.
But if you ignore that guilt repeatedly,
If you ignore the guilt or ignore your deep sadness and just push through, you become emotionally stoic to the point of spiritual death. The mirror crusts over completely.
we think we are being so strong by not complaining, but really we are just building a massive, impenetrable wall between us and God.
Vulnerability is the absolute key to connection. If you cannot admit to God, I am broken, or I am deeply jealous of my friend, or I am really struggling with my faith right now, then you are bringing a fake persona to your worship mat.
You're bringing an avatar.
Exactly. You are asking God to bless an avatar. But God wants to heal the real, methy you, not the polished mask you wear for society.
That is incredibly powerful. Okay, so we have done the external blockers. We have done the silent killers. Now we have to move to the place that genuinely makes me the most nervous. Part 3, the ugly heart.
This section comes heavily from Mufti Menk's analysis, and it is backed by several other classical scholars.
The reason it is termed the ugly heart is because these are 5 hidden habits that can easily coexist with a massive amount of outward religiosity.
This is the ultimate danger zone. You can be the person standing in the very front row of the mosque. You can be wearing the perfect, most modest clothes. You can be reciting scripture beautifully, fasting every Monday and Thursday without fail.
And still have a heart that is completely spiritually repugnant.
Let's start with the first hidden habit, secret self-admiration. The Arabic term is ujub.
The paradox. It is literally loving your own goodness.
It's that quiet internal monologue that says, look at me. Look how pious I am. I pray my night prayers. I don't drink like those people. I dress so modestly. I am fundamentally so much better than these random people at the mall.
It is very subtle, though. You would never actually say those words out loud because you know that would sound horribly arrogant.
You almost never say it out loud. You just feel it warmly in your chest. But the verdict from the source material on this is absolutely chilling.
What is the verdict?
A sinner who is completely broken and humble, crying over their terrible sins, is infinitely better in the eyes of God than a worshiper who is proud of their flawless worship.
Because pride was the original sin of Satan.
Exactly. Look at the story of Iblis, Satan. He didn't refuse to believe that God existed. He spoke directly to God. He knew the truth perfectly.
His problem wasn't belief.
His problem was that he refused to humble himself. He thought he was inherently better than Adam because he was made of fire and Adam was made of clay. When you secretly admire your own good deeds, you effectively delete them.
You turn them from acts of pure worship into acts of pure ego.
You become your own idol. You're worshiping your own image of being a good religious person.
Which leads perfectly into the second ugly habit, using religion to hurt others.
Weaponizing the truth. How many times have we heard someone use the phrase, "I'm just speaking the truth," as a blank check for absolute cruelty?
Oh, all the time. It's the classic, "I'm just advising you, brother," said while completely humiliating someone in the YouTube comments section or at a family dinner party.
Right. And the spiritual impact of this behavior is catastrophic. It actively pushes people away from God. The source material is crystal clear on this point. True guidance is always private, and it is always gentle.
So public shaming isn't about helping them.
If you are shaming someone publicly or using a very specific religious ruling just to make someone else feel small and inadequate, that is entirely for your own ego. It has nothing to do with their soul.
You are basically using the sacred word of God as a club to beat people over the head with.
And it makes your own heart incredibly ugly because it completely lacks mercy. You cannot claim to deeply love the Creator and then treat His creation with sheer contempt. It is a massive contradiction.
The third hidden habit of an ugly heart is schadenfreude, enjoying the downfall of others.
This is a massive, brutal test of the state of your heart. You have to ask yourself very honestly, how do you actually feel when someone you deeply dislike fails at something?
Or when someone you secretly envy gets taken down a peg publicly.
If we're being really honest, there's usually a dark little part of us that smiles and goes, "Ha, justice."
Karma.
And that little quiet ha is the actual disease, that tiny spark of joy at someone else's misery. If you feel relief or joy at another human being's pain, your heart is severely diseased.
What is the standard we're supposed to hold then?
The standard of a pure heart, according to the scholars, is that it actively wishes good even for its enemies. It genuinely wants them to be guided, not completely destroyed. It grieves for their mistakes rather than throwing a party to celebrate them.
That is a staggering bar to reach. That sounds almost impossible for a normal human being.
It is incredibly difficult. But that is exactly why this is a deep dive. We aren't here for the surface-level kindergarten stuff. We're here to actually clean the heart out.
Fair enough. I accept the challenge. Let's look at the fourth habit. Knowing the truth, but refusing to change.
Spiritual paralysis. This perfectly describes the modern consumer of faith. This is the person who consumes hours and hours of religious lectures, listens to deep dive analyses, maybe even this exact one right now, reads all the right books, nods along, cries at the really emotional stories.
And then changes absolutely nothing about their daily behavior.
Nothing changes. I think a huge number of us now consume Islamic content or religious content in general as a form of specialized entertainment, not as actual education.
We absolutely do. We binge watch profound lectures the exact same way we binge watch a Netflix drama series.
And the consequence of this habit is severe desensitization. The source explains that the more you hear the truth without taking any physical action on it, the weaker your conscience fundamentally becomes.
You build up a tolerance.
You build a massive tolerance to the warnings. Eventually, you can sit and hear the most terrifying, earth-shattering warnings of the Quran, and you feel absolutely nothing.
Because you have trained your brain to be a completely passive listener, not an active doer. It's like taking antibiotics but refusing to finish the full course. You don't kill the sickness, you just make the bacteria stronger and immune to the medicine.
That is the perfect analogy. You literally inoculate yourself against the truth.
Okay, the fifth and final ugly habit is dishonesty. And the specific source here, the Sikh Islam material, links dishonesty directly to breakthroughs.
Yes, it talks about how small lies act as a literal barrier to your prayers being answered by God.
We are talking about the brick wall again.
Exactly. The source calls dishonesty the ultimate barrier to barakah. You sit there and wonder why you are completely stuck in life, why your career isn't moving forward, why your relationships are failing. It might very well be because you are not a truthful person.
Just the small white lies.
Small white lies, broken promises, rounding up the numbers slightly on a tax form, exaggerating a story to look better. Truthfulness, or siddiq, is described as a spiritual superpower.
How does it act as a superpower?
When you are ruthlessly honest, even when it is incredibly hard and might cost you something in the short term, you completely align yourself with reality and with God. When you lie, even slightly, you create a false reality, and God simply does not bless falsity.
Wow. So let's recap where we are. We have the 15 external blockers, we have the 4 silent killers, and we have the 5 habits of the ugly heart. We have fully diagnosed the patient, and the patient is, well, the patient is us.
And the chart is not looking great.
It's really not looking great. But we need to pivot to the why. We've listed the symptoms, but what is the actual root cause of all this dysfunction?
Hamza Yusuf identifies what classical scholars call the root of all diseases. And it is a very classic, timeless concept: the love of the temporal world, or dunya.
Love of the dunya. So how does that connect to the specific habits? Why do we envy, for example?
Because we desperately want their worldly stuff, their house, their status, their money.
And why do we procrastinate the prayer?
Because we deeply love our worldly comfort in that specific moment more than we love the meeting with God. Every single habit we have discussed today, the lying, the cheating, the laziness, the toxic speech, traces directly back to an over-attachment to this temporary life.
We treat the temporary as if it is eternal, and we treat the eternal as if it is optional.
We have completely inverted reality.
And in the modern context, we have a massive amplifier for this love of the world, the phone.
The ultimate device of distraction. One of the sources makes a truly fascinating point about this. Distraction isn't just a harmless time waster. It literally rewrites the circuitry of the heart.
Digital dopamine.
Yes. Think about the physiological state. If you've been scrolling highly curated, fast-paced, short-form videos for 30 minutes, your brain is absolutely flooded with dopamine. It is overstimulated. It is practically vibrating.
And then what? You toss the phone on the couch and instantly say Allahu Akbar to start praying?
Exactly. Your brain is physically, biologically incapable of finding deep stillness or khushu in that immediate moment. You simply cannot go from 100 miles per hour to 0 instantly.
So the distraction physically prevents the spiritual connection. It is a biological mismatch.
It completely rewires the brain to constantly crave intense novelty. But prayer is fundamentally about repetition, slowness, and depth. Those are polar opposites.
So how do we fight that? Did the sources give a practical fix?
One very practical tip the source mentioned is the concept of the adhan lock.
The Adhan lock. Explain how that works.
The exact moment the adhan, the call to prayer, goes off, you immediately lock the phone away. And not just slipping it into your pocket, actually away. Put it in a drawer in another room.
Out of sight, out of mind.
You intentionally give your brain a 10 to 15-minute buffer zone to biologically detox before you stand in front of God. You have to build a transition zone between the chaos of the dunya and the peace of the prayer.
That is incredibly smart. I'm going to start doing that today. Okay, we absolutely cannot leave everyone hanging with just this heavy diagnosis. That would be entirely too depressing. We need the cure.
You need the prescription.
What do all these sources say about how to actually polish the mirror of the heart once it's covered in all this dust?
We have a comprehensive treatment plan synthesized from Hamza Yusuf's lectures, and it involves 4 specific pillars. Now, these are ancient, heavily tested methods.
Let's run through them. Pillar number 1, hunger.
Now, I know this sounds practically medieval to some modern ears, but it is deeply biological. Fasting, or simply intentionally eating less food, softens the heart.
Because gluttony hardens it.
Exactly. When the stomach is completely full, the other animal passions, lust, explosive anger, sheer laziness are wide awake. They are fully fueled up.
When you restrict the food,
When the stomach is empty, the spirit is awake. Hunger keeps the aggressive animalistic self in check so the soul can actually breathe.
pillar number 2, night vigil, or tahajjud.
This means standing in worship when the rest of the world sleeps. This is presented as the ultimate cure for hypocrisy.
Why does the time of day matter so much?
Because absolutely no one sees it. There is no Instagram story for your 3 a.m. prayer in the dark. There is no audience to applaud you. It is just you and God in total isolation.
So you can't be doing it for the ego.
You can't. It rebuilds pure sincerity like absolutely nothing else. It is the ultimate, private, intimate conversation.
Pillar number 3,
Silence. We talked about this with the silent killers.
yeah.
Consciously, intentionally limiting your speech to regain internal clarity. It is essentially about fasting with your tongue.
How do you practice that in real life?
Try it for just 1 hour today. Just completely stop talking. Don't text, don't speak, don't comment. Just observe what happens to your racing thoughts when you stop verbalizing everything.
And the 4th pillar, good company.
You simply cannot heal in a highly toxic environment. You have to find the people who naturally remind you of God, and you have to stick to them like glue.
And if you can't find those people,
If you can't find them in your community, you have to become that person yourself, and eventually the right people will find you.
I really love that. Now, I also loved the very practical micro habits we pulled from the Sikh Islam source material. These are tiny, actionable things we can start doing today.
Yes, the first 30 seconds rule is one of my absolute favorites. It is so deeply practical.
Break that mechanic down for us.
When bad news hits you, and it absolutely will hit, life is full of it. You get a really scary text message, you realize you lost your wallet, the car breaks down on the highway.
The moment of panic.
Exactly. You give the very first 30 seconds of your reaction entirely to Allah.
Before you do anything else.
Before you panic, before you curse the situation, before you frantically call your mom or text your spouse to complain. You actively connect that surge of emotion to a specific name or attribute of God.
So, if you realize you are suddenly completely broke, you immediately call on the provider, Arzak. If you are terrified about a medical diagnosis, you call on the protector.
Exactly. You intentionally train your reflex. Instead of having an automatic reflex of blind panic and despair,
Yeah.
you slowly build a reflex of immediate prayer. It completely rewires how your nervous system handles sudden stress.
It turns a random crisis into a deliberate connection point.
It's brilliant.
Another great micro habit from the sources was the 24-hour honesty sprint.
This is a massive challenge for anyone listening. Go one single day, just 24 hours, with absolutely zero lies.
Not even the little social one.
No saying I'm 5 minutes away when you literally haven't even put your shoes on to leave the house.
No.
No slightly exaggerated stories at lunch to make yourself look cooler to your coworkers. No rounding up the numbers.
Just brutal absolute truth for one whole day. It sounds incredibly easy on paper, but I bet it is impossibly hard in practice.
It is exhausting. But it completely reveals how heavily we rely on those little convenient lies to just grease the wheels of our daily social life. It forces you to be hyper-deliberate about every word. It forces you to be genuinely brave.
And then there's the one-page rule we mentioned earlier.
Read just one single page of the Quran daily. It keeps a communication line open. The classical sources consistently say the exact same thing. It is vastly better to do a tiny bit consistently than to do a huge, heroic amount completely sporadically.
The steady, relentless drip of water eventually hollows out the solid stone.
Precisely. And finally, the ultimate prescription involves the concept of emotional honesty.
Vulnerability with the divine.
Admitting out loud to God that you are deeply struggling. We have this false idea that God needs us to be perfectly sinless robots. He doesn't need you to be perfect. He already knows you aren't. He literally created you with flaws.
So what does he want?
He needs you to be turning, the state of constant turning back. The perfection belongs entirely to him. The raw effort belongs to us.
And that really leads us to the absolute core message of this whole deep dive. The ultimate goal isn't flawlessly executed perfection. If you take only one single thing away from all this heavy analysis, it definitely shouldn't be a feeling of, well, I'm just a failure.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
The core goal is tawbah, which translates to return.
Return.
Faith is not a neat straight line on a graph that just goes up and up forever. It fluctuates wildly. The prophet, peace be upon him, said very clearly, all the sons of Adam are sinners, but the absolute best of sinners are those who repent often.
So a strong heart isn't actually one that never falls down.
Not at all. A strong heart is simply one that bounces back up every single time it hits the floor. It refuses to stay down.
I really love the powerful image the sources left us with at the end of the material. The image of the heart as a garden.
It is such a beautiful, resonant image to end this discussion on. Think about it. If you own a physical garden in your backyard, you never have to actively plant weeds, do you?
No, you never go to the store and buy a packet of weed seeds.
Weeds do not ask for your permission to grow. They just naturally take over if you do absolutely nothing. The weeds are your bad habits. They are the procrastination, the secret envy, the constant digital distraction.
So the fundamental question isn't, do I have weeds in my heart?
Because we all have weeds. If you are a living, breathing human being, your garden has weeds.
The real question is, what are you going to do about it today?
Exactly. What specific weed are you going to reach down and pull out today? You absolutely do not have to clear the entire overgrown forest in one single hour. That's impossible. But you do have to pull one weed.
Maybe that one weed is the procrastination of your very next prayer.
Or maybe it is the bitter envy you feel toward a specific coworker who got the promotion you wanted.
You identify it, and you pull it out by the root. You let the sunlight back into the soil.
And that slow daily pulling of weeds, that is the spiritual work of a lifetime.
And that is exactly where we will have to leave it for today. A massive, truly massive thank you to our expert for guiding us through this incredibly heavy but completely necessary stack of research.
It was my absolute pleasure. Honestly, discussing this is a stark reminder for myself, first and foremost.
And to you listening right now, take a quiet second when this ends. Which of those 24 habits we just listed actually hit a nerve? Which one made you slightly uncomfortable?
Pay close attention to that discomfort.
Because that struck nerve is your sign. That specific spot is exactly where your real work begins today. Thank you so much for diving deep with us. We will catch you on the next deep dive.